That evening, my daughter-in-law posted a photo from her wedding anniversary dinner with the caption, "Family only." What she didn't realize was that one photo was about to destroy the comfortable little life she had built under my roof. Because while her entire family sat around a luxury steakhouse table laughing and drinking wine, the woman paying their bills was sitting alone at home. Me. And when I saw that photo, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't call my son screaming. I simply left one comment. Then from now on, the family should also be the ones paying the family's bills. 5 minutes later, my phone started exploding with calls. 30 missed calls. Voicemails. Panic. And that's when my son and his wife finally learned something dangerous about quiet people. Silence doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes it means someone has finally decided they're done being used. And once that happens, everything changes. It was a crisp Friday evening in Connecticut when I decided I'd officially had enough. My name is Martha. I'm 65 years old, and I live on the ground floor of the duplex I've owned for over 30 years. My son Julian and his wife Brooke live in the upstairs unit. That night was their 5th wedding anniversary. A few days earlier, Brooke casually mentioned, while literally walking away from me, that I wasn't invited to dinner. She claimed the reservation was tight, and they wanted to keep it intimate. I simply nodded. I knew it was a weak excuse, but I wasn't going to force myself into a place where I clearly wasn't wanted. So that evening, I made myself a cup of tea and settled into my armchair. I'm not someone who sits around feeling sorry for herself. I lost my husband 10 years ago, and over time I learned how to make peace with quiet nights. But then I opened Facebook, and the very first thing I saw wasn't even from Brooke. It was from her, a photo of a long, beautiful dinner table at the most expensive steakhouse in town. Brooke, Julian, Brooke's parents, her siblings, even a couple cousins were all there. Everyone smiling. Everyone laughing. Everyone raising glasses of expensive wine. The caption said, "Only family. So blessed to finally have all my favorite people in one place." Only family. I sat there staring at the screen. The woman who had spent the last 5 years paying the property taxes, the water bill, the electricity, the heating for the entire house. Apparently, I didn't count as family. But I didn't explode. I didn't yell. Instead, I felt something colder. Clarity. I pressed like. Then I typed. In that case, I'll stop paying the bills that the family should be handling themselves. I hit send and calmly set my tablet down. 5 minutes later, the calls started. First Brooke. Then Julian. 30 missed calls back to back. I ignored every single one. Instead, I walked over to my filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. Seconds later, I heard heavy footsteps pounding down the stairs. Then frantic knocking at my door. It was Julian. I took my time placing the folder neatly on the dining table before finally opening the door. My son stood there breathless, his face red with panic. "Mom, what is with that comment? Brooke is crying in the car. Her entire family saw it. Delete it right now." I looked at him calmly. "No angit. No emotion. Just facts. Julian, I'm not deleting anything. It's the truth." He stared at me like I was speaking another language. Julian had always been the kind of man who wanted peace at any price, usually by letting Brooke get whatever she wanted. "You're ruining our anniversary," he said helplessly. "Starting next month, the electricity and water for the upstairs unit will be under your names. I already canceled the autopay from my bank account." Julian looked like the ground disappeared beneath his feet. "But why now?" I gave him a thin smile. "Because I realized I'm apparently not family. And if I'm not family, I shouldn't be carrying the family's responsibilities." He opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Because deep down he knew I was right. Right then, the front door downstairs slammed shut. Brooke had gotten out of the car. Seconds later, she stormed up the porch steps. She marched directly toward us, furious and humiliated. "This is blackmail, Martha," she snapped. I slowly shook my head. "No, Brooke. This is adulthood." The next morning, the house felt strangely quiet. Normally I'd hear Brooke stomping around upstairs or yelling through the hallway. But that morning? Nothing. I sat peacefully at my kitchen table drinking coffee, And honestly, for the first time in years, I felt lighter. It felt good not carrying two households anymore. And truthfully, I hadn't been bluffing. The paperwork had already been prepared for weeks. Because Brooke's disrespect didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly. Little comments. Dismissive looks. Constant entitlement. Eventually, she stopped seeing my generosity as kindness and started treating it like something she deserved. Around noon, a utility company van pulled into the driveway. I had already scheduled a technician to separate the meters. As I walked him into the basement, the upstairs door suddenly flew open. Brooke stood there in her bathrobe glaring down at us. "What's going on?" she demanded. "The technician is setting up your own meter," I answered calmly. "From now on, you'll pay for what you use." She rushed downstairs, looking completely shocked. "You can't do this. We didn't budget for this." "You've lived here rent-free for 5 years, Brooke. Budgeting for your own lights and water is the bare minimum." Then I added softly, "You're a smart woman. I'm sure you'll figure it out." She glared at me. "This is ridiculous. You're punishing us because I wanted one private dinner." I took a slow step closer. "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm adjusting my expenses to match my role in your life." Then I looked her directly in the eye. "If you treat me like a stranger, then you can pay bills like one." She spun around and stormed back upstairs. Later that afternoon, I heard them fighting. Real fighting. For the first time, the perfect image they showed everyone else was cracking. Monday morning, phase 2 began. Over the years, Brooke had basically taken over the backyard. Her expensive patio furniture blocked my favorite spot under the old cherry tree. Whenever she invited friends over, I felt trapped inside my own home. That ended Monday. I hired 2 local college boys looking for extra cash. While Brooke was at work and Julian was upstairs on Zoom calls, we carefully moved every piece of Brooke's patio setup onto their second-floor deck. I wasn't trying to damage anything. I was reclaiming space. Then I drove to the garden center. I bought 2 oversized Adirondack chairs and a beautiful teak side table. I placed them exactly where Brooke's furniture used to sit. To finish everything off, I installed an elegant privacy screen between my patio area and the rest of the yard. It looked classy, but the message was loud and clear. When Brooke got home that evening, I was already sitting beneath the cherry tree with a glass of Chardonnay and a book. I heard her heels suddenly stop on the pavement. "Where's my furniture?" she demanded. I calmly turned a page. "I had it moved to your deck. The backyard belongs to my unit, and I'd like to enjoy my summer peacefully." "You still can," I replied with a sip of wine. "Up on your deck. You'll have much more privacy for your family-only gatherings." She opened her mouth, closed it, then stormed back inside. Doors slammed upstairs. My book was especially enjoyable that night. Next came the basement laundry room. For years, Brooke treated my expensive washer and dryer like they belonged to her. Back when we were close, I didn't mind helping. But respect is the currency I deal in now. And Brooke was bankrupt. She'd leave wet clothes sitting in the machine for days. She'd ask me to move her laundry into the dryer because I was already downstairs anyway. One Wednesday morning, I walked downstairs and found Brooke's blouses and Julian's gym clothes scattered everywhere. I ignored the mess. Instead, I pulled a heavy-duty plug lock out of my toolbox. 2 minutes later, the washer was locked. No key. No laundry. Thursday night, frantic footsteps echoed through the basement. Then Julian called out, "Mom, did you lock the washer? Brooke has a big meeting tomorrow and needs her suit cleaned." I leaned against the railing. "I did. The machine has been overused lately and started making strange noises." Then I shrugged lightly. "Since we're separate households now, you should probably consider getting your own." Julian looked desperate. "But where are we supposed to do laundry tonight?" "There's a 24-hour laundromat 3 blocks away," I suggested. Brooke stepped forward, her face burning red with anger. "You're doing this on purpose. You're trying to force us out." I looked directly into her eyes. "No, Brooke. I'm taking care of my own property." Then I added calmly, "If you want the luxury of independence, you have to pay for it." Saturday brought another lesson in self-sufficiency. For years, I handled the big grocery runs for everyone. I stocked the basement fridge with steaks, fruit. They simply helped themselves whenever they wanted. That Saturday, I only shopped for myself. Salmon, asparagus, fruit, a nice bottle of wine. Nothing extra. When I got home, I emptied the basement fridge, cleaned it thoroughly, unplugged it, and left the door open to air out. That evening, I heard Brooke head downstairs, probably looking for wine. Seconds later, she appeared at my door. She didn't even knock. She tried the handle first. But I had started locking my door. I opened it slowly. Is there a problem? The basement fridge is empty, she snapped. Where's the food for the weekend? I only shopped for myself today, I answered calmly. Since you're handling your own utilities now, I assumed you'd also handle your own groceries. Brooke stared at me in disbelief. You could have warned us. We have nothing in the house and the store's close in 20 minutes. I'm not your housekeeper, Brooke. Then I added quietly. A quick look in your own refrigerator would have told you supplies were low. I paused. You're adults. I'm sure DoorDash still delivers. Then I gently closed the door. It's amazing how peaceful life becomes when you stop carrying people who never appreciated the wait. Sunday had always been my cooking day. For years, Julian expected giant family dinners, roasts, Italian feasts, homemade desserts, and Brooke constantly invited people over, without even asking me first. Her parents, friends, cousins, they sat at my table while I cooked and served everyone like unpaid staff. That Sunday morning, instead of putting on an apron, I booked a reservation at a beautiful lakeside bistro. I took my time getting ready. Favorite dress, lipstick, perfume. At 11 o'clock, I left the house. As I backed out of the driveway, I noticed Julian staring from the upstairs window looking confused. Normally, a beautiful meal, champagne, a walk beside the lake. When I finally returned home around 5 o'clock, tension filled the entire house. Julian sat on the porch steps waiting for me. Mom, where were you? Brooke's parents came over for lunch. We thought you were cooking. I carefully hung up my coat. Why would I be cooking, Julian? We already established last week that I'm apparently not family. He rubbed his forehead miserably. It was awkward. We had to order Chinese food at the last minute. Her mother kept asking where you were. I smiled faintly. You could have told her the truth. That I'm finally enjoying my own life instead of serving people who exclude me from theirs. Julian looked exhausted. Brooke says she wants to move out. She says she can't handle the hostility anymore. I looked him directly in the eye. It isn't hostility, Julian. It's boundaries. Then I added softly. And if she wants to move, I won't stop either of you. That threat had been Brooke's final attempt to regain control. She assumed my greatest fear was being alone in a large house. But she was wrong. I felt lonelier being ignored inside my own home than I ever did by myself. Tuesday night, Julian knocked on my door again. This time he looked pale. He carried apartment listings and handwritten budgets. I invited him in and made tea. We sat quietly at the kitchen table while he spread the papers out. We looked at apartments, he admitted. The rent is insane. He swallowed hard. With utilities, groceries, and everything else, we'd barely have money left for travel or Brooke's Pilates classes. I sipped my tea and waited. Finally, he looked at me. Mom, can't we just go back to how things were? We'll apologize for the photo. I carefully set my cup down. Julian, this was never just about a photo. He lowered his head. I know. I was a coward. I just wanted peace with Brooke. I understand, I said softly. But you don't create peace by allowing someone else to be exploited. Then I gave him my final terms. You're welcome to stay, but the free ride is over. I paused. If you remain here, we'll sign a formal lease and you'll pay fair market rent. Julian swallowed visibly. Brooke will never agree to that. She says the house will belong to me someday anyway. My expression sharpened. Maybe someday. But right now it belongs to me. Then I said the thing I think he needed to hear most. I'm still alive, Julian. And I refuse to live like a ghost in my own home. When Julian carried the news upstairs, the storm finally exploded. I heard shouting, doors slamming, glass breaking. Brooke wasn't used to hearing the word no. The next morning, after Julian left for work, I carried 10 large moving boxes into the hallway. Then I knocked on their door. Brooke answered wearing a robe, eyes swollen from either crying or screaming. She stiffened when she saw me. "What do you want?" "I brought moving boxes," I said calmly. "Julian mentioned my terms weren't acceptable. I wanted to make moving easier for you." Then I added politely, "Do you need packing tape too?" She stared at me like I had slapped her, because suddenly she understood something important. Her threat had been a bluff. She never intended to give up the comfortable life she had built inside my home. "You'd really throw your own son onto the street?" she spat. "Julian is always welcome here," I replied evenly. "But he's an adult who makes his own choices." I held her gaze. "If he chooses to leave with you, that's his decision." Then I said the part one should have said years ago. "But I'm done being disrespected in the house I paid for." None of it worked anymore, because I had finally stepped off the chessboard entirely. "The boxes are in the hallway," I said before turning away. And strangely, I didn't feel angry. I felt free. That evening, there was no more screaming upstairs. Only the quiet sound of two people finally confronting reality. 2 weeks later, a small U-Haul sat in the driveway. Brooke couldn't stomach paying rent to her mother-in-law, so they rented a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. Julian carried boxes silently back and forth all afternoon. When everything was loaded, he came downstairs one last time. He looked tired, but oddly relieved. He handed me the keys to the upstairs unit. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything." Then he hugged me. A real hug. The first honest hug we'd shared in years. I gently patted his back. "It'll be okay, Julian." Then I smiled softly. Sometimes people need distance to remember someone's true value. I opened the front door for him. "My door will always be open to you." He nodded quietly and walked to the car. Brooke sat in the passenger seat staring straight ahead. As they drove away, I stood at the window and watched the car disappear around the corner. Then I took a long, deep breath. The house was silent. But it wasn't lonely silence. It was peaceful silence. The kind that feels like freedom. I walked upstairs into the empty apartment. It smelled like fresh cleaner and new beginnings. I decided I'd renovate it lightly and rent it to a quiet retired couple. Maybe with the extra income I'd finally travel. Italy. The south of France. Places I had always dreamed about. Then I returned downstairs, settled into my favorite chair, and picked up my tablet. For a moment, I thought about that anniversary photo. It felt like another lifetime. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't begged. I hadn't plotted revenge. I had simply stopped making myself small. I opened my book, took a sip of tea, and leaned back comfortably in my chair. I wasn't a supporting character in someone else's story anymore. I was finally the lead in my own.